Welcome to the Dinar Daily. What you are about to hear concerns a developing situation that has been the subject of intense conversation for many years within the global currency communities. After a long period marked by anticipation, unverified information, and ongoing conjecture, new reports are circulating that suggest a significant shift in the underlying financial systems. These reports focus on the supposed activation of specific banking authorizations, referred to as Tier 4B codes, which are closely associated with private exchange events for currencies such as the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong. If this information were to be confirmed, it could represent a crucial step in the long-awaited revaluation process that a large number of global citizens have been tracking with keen interest. This development, if validated by official channels, distinguishes itself from the numerous unconfirmed reports that have surfaced over the years. We must examine the details of what is being observed, what these purported technical changes signify, and why this particular moment is generating such a high degree of focused attention compared to previous alarms. Whether you are new to the discourse surrounding these currencies or a seasoned observer of international financial movements, the technical details now being reported suggest an unprecedented level of activity. Over the last day, a noticeable increase in reports from sources claiming insight into financial networks has pointed toward the input of Tier 4B codes into the global banking and financial infrastructure. This infrastructure is believed by many to be connected to an overarching global currency modernization effort. For a long time, individuals with claimed insider knowledge have hinted at imminent activity, but the current difference lies in the reported detection of actual, live back-end changes within the systems. This suggests a functional shift rather than just verbal assurance. In the context of the operational banking environment, these authorization codes are understood to be the definitive signal, the essential green light required for redemption centers and banking institutions to commence the processing of private currency exchanges for registered holders. Essentially, without the secure entry and verification of these codes, the entire process remains dormant. However, once they are active, the mechanism for currency exchange is said to begin its movement, enabling the flow of required liquidity. This operational detail is precisely why the current reports are causing such a profound reaction. Across various online platforms and private financial communities, alerts, purported screenshots, and quiet confirmations are being shared, all indicating that a meaningful technical milestone has been reached within the underlying systems. This focus on observable back-end activity rather than mere promises has captured widespread attention. Even those who view the currency revaluation narrative with skepticism are taking note of the synchronized nature of the reports about these deep financial movements. To fully appreciate the significance of this alleged event, it is helpful to revisit the categorization of participants within the purported global currency reform framework. This structure often separates participants into different tiers. Tiers 1 and 2 are generally reserved for the settlements involving sovereign governments and major institutional entities. Tier 3 typically encompasses larger private groups, including humanitarian and development projects requiring substantial funding. The crucial category for many retail investors is Tier 4B. This is the designated level for the general public, the individual currency holders who purchased instruments like the Iraqi dinar, the Vietnamese dong, and other specialized notes. When reports state that the codes are live, they are specifically referring to the activation of the Tier 4B, or private redemption, level that countless everyday holders have been anticipating for many years. Therefore, if the credibility of these persistent and numerous reports is accepted, it implies that the necessary operational signals have been transmitted and verified. Consequently, banks and authorized processing centers would be technically capable of moving forward with appointment scheduling, the verification of currency notes, and the subsequent release of exchange funds under the new, restructured financial framework. This direct link to the retail redemption process is why this particular tier is the focal point of intense scrutiny and hope. The mechanics of how these codes are alleged to function are tied to secure proprietary authorizations distributed through the top levels of the global banking architecture. An analogy often used is that of a complex, multi-layered vault. The activation of the code is not an instant explosion, but rather the initial turn of a master key that sets various internal, interconnected mechanisms into motion, unlocking each layer systematically. The process is designed to be deliberate and phased. The Tier 4B codes in this context are said to represent verified authorization signals, potentially operating within a highly modernized or quantum-linked secure financial system. Once these signals are validated through primary treasury and major banking nodes, they grant explicit permission to the redemption centers to begin the actual processing and administration of the exchanges. The news that these codes are live effectively signals that the technical groundwork for the next operational steps has been established, moving the process from preparation to implementation. What lends credence to the current wave of reports, in contrast to historical patterns, is the apparent coordination across multiple, distinct financial indicators. In the past, movement on one front, perhaps a change in Iraq's policy, would occur in isolation, while other necessary components remained inactive. Currently, however, reports from systems tied to Iraq, Vietnam, and critical U.S. financial networks are appearing in a unified fashion, suggesting a coordinated global effort. Recent verifiable actions include the Central Bank of Iraq publicly announcing significant advancements in its infrastructure designed to handle exchange rate operations. Concurrently, Vietnam's banking system has reportedly upgraded its clearing and settlement mechanisms to international standards. Furthermore, there have been unconfirmed accounts of U.S. banks implementing key internal software updates relevant to a large-scale currency exchange process within the past week. This simultaneous activity, combined with the anecdotal appearance of internal, unconfirmed test or placeholder exchange rates within core banking systems, paints a picture of highly coordinated activity. It is the first time in an extensive period that the three perceived pillars of the exchange, Iraq's currency foundation, Vietnam's modernization, and the U.S. banking channels for processing, appear to be moving with such noticeable synchronicity. This alignment is what distinguishes the present moment for many observers. The question of whether this could be yet another instance of disappointment and a false start is a valid one, rooted in the long and often fretting history of these currency narratives. Previous episodes involving reported test rates or code releases have led to cycles of rising and falling expectations within the community. However, even cautious observers are pointing out that the structure of the current reports is fundamentally different. The nature of the current intelligence is not based solely on anonymous forum posts or vague promises. Instead, the updates often reference alleged details from experienced financial contacts and verified banking technicians who describe quantifiable, observable changes within actual systems. These descriptions refer to implemented, functional back-end updates rather than mere forward-looking assurances. While official, public announcements remain the ultimate standard for confirmation, the convergence of so many moving parts suggests a situation that warrants close attention. The key component of this narrative is the financial journey of Iraq. Over the past several months, the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, has been methodically executing a series of financial reforms. These reforms have been explicitly aimed at stabilizing the country's currency and modernizing its entire monetary policy framework. This included coordination with international regulatory bodies, adjustments to compliance mechanisms, and the construction of digital pathways fully compatible with major global clearing systems. These operational steps were not arbitrary. Rather, they were necessary preconditions laid out for full, legitimate participation in high-level international currency activities. The fact that the CBI has publicly documented and completed these foundational tasks means that the required infrastructure is in place to support any significant rate-related change that may be planned for the future. Regardless of when the theoretical revaluation may occur, the financial modernization of Iraq itself is an established and verifiable fact. Vietnam also plays an integral role in this unfolding financial story. Over recent years, the government and its banking authorities have intensified efforts to enhance transparency, strengthen their foreign currency reserves, and integrate modern digital payment systems that adhere to international regulatory standards. The Vietnamese dong, which has historically been considered a minor or peripheral currency on the world stage, is steadily being positioned as part of a wider, organized wave of financial modernization across the Southeast Asian region. When the reports indicate that Vietnam's digital financial infrastructure is now fully synchronized with major international platforms, it suggests that another critical piece of the complex global puzzle has fallen into place. If the dong is genuinely being prepared for broader international usage and is adopting the necessary compliance mechanisms, then the strategic adjustment in its international valuation would be a logical and economically coherent step within a modernization agenda, the focal point for the physical exchange process. For many individual holders remains the United States, where the majority of private redemption processing is anticipated to take place. Financial institutions in the U.S. that are reportedly designated for these private exchanges are said to have been conducting quiet readiness drills and implementing crucial technology updates. The mention of the Tier 4B codes being entered signifies that these banks' internal systems are now connected to the necessary global authorization protocols. This operational linkage is frequently described as the moment when the system's servers are finally communicating with one another. After a long period of preparatory silence, the underlying enthusiasm being generated within online communities is not simply based on verbal speculation about a rate change, but on the apparent functionality of the technical backbone that makes a change logistically possible. For those who have monitored this for years, this technical step is perceived as a major psychological turning point. An equally captivating detail is related to banking screen updates reported from internal sources. While the public does not have access to the highly secure internal currency exchange screens, certain employees have reportedly observed that currencies like the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong are being displayed in a modified manner. They are allegedly no longer grayed out or entirely hidden, but instead are showing an active status, awaiting pending rate updates. While this type of observation does not in any way confirm the final exchange numbers, it is interpreted as evidence that the core banking software is actively preparing to receive and process a change. Banks typically do not invest time and resources in updating non-functional or purely speculative data for no reason. When they modify live internal systems, it is generally an indication of an anticipated imminent operational event. This quiet, technical preparation has strongly contributed to the current surge in focused attention across the community. Additionally, certain reports have suggested the momentary appearance of preliminary test rates, with the dinar reportedly reaching values above $4 and the dong around $2. It is crucial to emphasize that these unverified numbers may simply be arbitrary placeholders used for internal banking simulations and system checks. Their reported appearance, however, is significant because the mere existence of active test rates suggests that the banks are running dress rehearsals for live processing scenarios. A test rate functions like a thorough rehearsal before a major public event. It is used to ensure that every component of the financial system, from data entry to transfer confirmation, will operate without error when the actual final values are transmitted. Therefore, even if these specific reported figures never materialize publicly, their presence in simulated environments strongly signals that the implementation phase for a rate change may be drawing closer. The context for all this technical activity is a much broader global conversation about a potential shift toward asset-backed financial systems. In recent years, there has been increasing discussion among global finance leaders regarding the necessity of linking currencies to tangible reserves, such as gold or key commodities. The rationale behind this is to enhance systemic stability and reinforce trust across international markets. If the reported Tier 4B activity is indeed intertwined with the establishment of such an asset-backed framework. The implications extend far beyond simple currency exchanges. It could be viewed as the initial, operational evidence of a major global realignment toward economies based on verifiable value. While no one can confirm the entire scope of this alleged framework, it is clear that many major nations have been proactively increasing their gold reserves and establishing new bilateral trade agreements, steps which are often prerequisites for such a system. For the ordinary person who has been tracking these developments, this moment translates to the possibility that years of patient waiting could finally be approaching a resolution. Those who have held these currencies for an extended period have maintained a consistent belief that change would eventually arrive. Now, with the reported activation of the key banking codes and systemic movement, the lengthy period of anticipation may be entering its final stage. However, this heightened moment of excitement is also a time for increased vigilance and caution. Historically, periods of intense speculation have been exploited by malicious actors and scammers. It is vital to remember a fundamental rule: no legitimate redemption center or banking institution will ever demand personal information or currency in advance, nor will they require upfront fees for an exchange appointment. Individuals must rely exclusively on official channels for communication and scheduled appointments. In terms of what might happen next, based on the rumored and typical rollout patterns for a phased process, the activation of Tier 4B would likely be immediately followed by the initial release of notifications or secure appointment emails to registered currency holders. These messages are expected to contain scheduling links, detailed instructions, and requirements for the necessary verification of currency holdings. Following this initial contact, individuals would attend pre-scheduled appointments to formally verify their currency, execute all required documentation, and receive the exchange funds into their designated accounts. The logistical process is often structured to begin regionally and then systematically expand nationwide over a period of days. It is not an instantaneous event, but a carefully managed, secure operation. If the operational rollout continues as reportedly expected, public exchanges for the wider market could follow relatively quickly thereafter. Beyond the technical and logistical aspects, this rumored development carries significant emotional weight for many participants. The narratives surrounding the dinar and dong have long been symbolic of hope for financial restructuring, debt relief, and the ability to pursue a new path. Years of patience have resulted in the formation of global communities that consistently share information, encouragement, and updates. The phrase Tier 4B codes are live has, for this group, become an emotional rallying cry. Regardless of the eventual accuracy of every specific detail being reported, the collective sense of unity and deep anticipation within these communities is undeniable. The resilience learned through this long period of waiting may now be on the verge of being rewarded with tangible financial results. This sense of culmination and shared perseverance is a powerful aspect of the current atmosphere. The ripple effects of a currency revaluation of this scale could extend far beyond the individual investor. If the international values of currencies like the Iraqi dinar or the Vietnamese dong were to increase, it would fundamentally strengthen the economies of Iraq and Vietnam, naturally attracting new international trade partnerships and injecting critical liquidity into major national development projects for the nations involved. This translates to the potential for significant improvements in national infrastructure, the creation of new employment opportunities, and a path towards stronger, more stable financial independence. From a broader global perspective, such an event could contribute to rebalancing international trade flows and establishing fairer, more reciprocal exchange relationships. A story that began as a retail investment could evolve into an economic renaissance affecting millions of people. It is also important to note that a general movement toward greater transparency is becoming a prominent theme in global finance. Governments, central banks, and financial institutions worldwide are increasingly adopting clearer, auditable processes, digital tracking methods, and secure transaction protocols. This broader emphasis on transparency supports the credibility of any significant Financial transition. When currency flows can be clearly traced, verified against reserves and backed by assets, public and institutional trust increases. This is the purported design principle behind the quantum or advanced financial systems being discussed, to build integrity into every layer of the global financial architecture. As a result, even those who approach the RVGCR discussion with skepticism agree that the arc of global finance is bending toward greater accountability and TRACEABIL at TY. As we conclude this overview of the latest developments, the core message remains a directive to maintain perspective, stay composed, remain in a state of readiness, and seek reliable information. Major financial transitions are rarely instantaneous events. They are managed through a series of structured phases. If the reports regarding Tier 4B activation are accurate, it means the process has transitioned from the phase of mere speculation to the operational phase. Therefore, the wise course of action is to secure all personal documentation, diligently monitor announcements from official, verifiable sources, and avoid engaging in any speculative behavior that could lead to financial or procedural mistakes. Historical observation shows that patience is often the most valuable asset in complex financial endeavors. Allow the reported process to unfold organically and prepare prudently for whatever the eventual outcome may be. To summarize the magnitude of this moment, we must take a step back and appreciate the convergence of signals. After an extensive period of uncertainty, the key indicators seem to be aligning. Iraq's financial foundation is reportedly set, Vietnam's infrastructure is synchronized, and now, the crucial Tier 4B codes are reportedly live within the banking systems. Whether this is viewed through the lens of economic policy or the fulfillment of a long-held belief, it is undeniably a potentially pivotal moment in financial history. This may well be the beginning of a new chapter focused on greater transparency, verifiable value, and widespread opportunity. We must remain attentive, grounded in reality, and steady in our approach. The events of the coming days could indeed be foundational, representing a period that future investors and economists will analyze for decades to come.